Hello, I'm Joshua Crocker.
And I'm Kevin Liston.
And this is Kicking for a Living,
A podcast about martial arts and business from two martial arts instructors. Well, this is exciting because we have another guest on. And this guest has been with us before. But it's always exciting when we have people on. I'm always excited to have other people's opinions. And it saves me a little bit of breath, so I don't always have to be the one talking.
Back with us is Miss Debra Holmes, one of our instructors at our dojo, a 5th degree black belt, really awesome. You'll remember her from last episode you were on with us.
Mm-hmm. Which I think we were talking about kind of what our goals are for, or what our wish list was for a dojo. What would be some of the things we would definitely want. And I remember talking about that recently and saying we've hit some of those.
Absolutely.
We have some of those goals we've got. So that's awesome.
Including the toaster plushie.
Yes.
Yep, I remember that. So how have you been since we last were on an episode? I know we talk all the time in class and before and after, but since the last episode, how have you been? How's life?
Well, number one, great. Thank you guys for inviting me here. I always enjoy doing the podcast with you guys. It's a chance for all of us to kind of a think tank while we're doing this. And so that's a pretty cool idea. I've been doing fine. My classes are going well. My kickboxing class has changed a little bit. Mm-hmm. It's now co-ed, which is great. The women still have their class on Sunday. But it's growing because of that. So I'm really happy about that. So it seems to be going well. And you guys?
I think everything's going pretty good. It's definitely been busy the last several months with back to school and things like that. And summer tends to get busy, but it's been a good kind of busy. I've been enjoying it. It's been pretty good. Yeah,
great summer. I mean, this whole year's been pretty great. I mean, last episode we were getting ready to move into this new building, and now we're here. You know, a lot's happened, and you've been there alongside the whole time. But yeah, I think overall been a pretty positive last few months.
Fantastic. That's great. Which I enjoy. I like, and I know that first off, I want to give a shout out, thank you to all of our listeners as we're slowly starting to grow. I know we've actually had some good feedback from students and parents who have listened and things of that nature. So thank you all for listening. Thank you all for your support. I really appreciate it. So we want to keep doing these as long as people keep listening to them.
It's been a lot of fun, and I feel like we're really starting to hit a groove with them. And some of the topics we've been going over recently have been interesting. And I think this week will be another one, because one of the reasons we wanted to bring you on, Deb, was to talk about training as an adult. I mean, for our listeners out there, a lot of you might be older, mm-hmm. and both you and Kevin, started as adults. Kevin, younger at 19. Right. And then you were in your 30s, correct?
I was 36.
36.
You killed my joke.
Which was?
Oh, yes. Sorry, Kevin.
What it's like to train as a lovely 21-year-old, Deb. That was my joke. But...
I know. I wish. But anyway. Yeah.
So to get started, I think the first thing I want to talk about is starting as an adult. So as someone who started in their 30s, which is at 19, neither of those are terribly old, but it is different than someone who starts as a kid. A lot of the new students we get are kids, and we hear from their parents or adults like, I feel like I'm too old, or I'm not sure if this is something I can do at this point. Or it's something that they do want to do as an adult, but the starting process is a little bit different because of that. So I'll let you two get started on this. What's it like starting martial arts as an adult from your experience and from what you've seen as a teacher?
Well, one of the main differences in starting as an adult is it's your choice. Mom and dad didn't make this choice for you and said, hey, I think this would be good for you, et cetera, et cetera. Or as a small child going 6 or 7, I've seen, Spider-Man and I want to do what he does. Those sorts of things. It was a very conscious decision to do that. Based on the fact that my primary physician asked me one day, I had some physical issues, and he said, how stressful is your work? And I said, well, it's no more stressful than it's ever been. And he looked at me and he said, you need to do more physical activity. And so the dojo that I went to, Living Defense Martial Arts in Arkansas, was basically 1.5 miles from my home. And I just drove down there and walked in, and that's when that all began. And the second part of that is I actually had the money that I could afford to go to a martial arts school. You know, I mean, that sometimes is legitimately a reason that you can't go. But there's usually ways to work around that as well.
Well, and for me, I wanted to do it as a kid, and the cost and things were a reason that I couldn't do it. And it's interesting because you said, it's kind of funny here, and I'm going to kind of make you eat your own words, and I'm not trying to do this in a mean way, but you said that as an adult, it was your choice. But at the same time, you had someone, a physician, tell you you need to do more physical activity. Now, it was your choice to do martial arts. You could have gone to the gym or anything else. Or I guess you could have ignored their advice. But there's always kind of that kickoff, that thing that says, what did I do? And so while it wasn't just you woke up one day and said, I want to do martial arts, it was, I need to be more active. I know there's this martial arts school. Why not? You know what I mean?
Right. And I had been interested in it. I remember, and this is dating me by a lot, but some of you out there may remember the Saturday morning martial arts or samurai black and whites that basically were dubbed in English, and so the moving mouth never matched the words. But I was always fascinated by Hollywood, or at that point in time, movie world kind of martial arts, which I can't even tell you whether I knew at that point that was just all baloney, basically, because it was all set, or that I really thought that I could possibly do that at the age of 36. But hey, why not give it a try, right?
Right.
So that was also one. It was one of those kiddie dreams that you have. And why? But at the end of the day, Kevin, you're right. Somebody prompted me to think about what I wanted to do. And I've been an athlete. I've done lots of things. Played tennis, indoor soccer, the whole 9 yards. So I'd done other things. And perhaps that also pushed me toward doing the martial arts because I remembered it as a kid. And said, hey, that might be a cool thing to do. And so, and yeah.
I definitely think that made it easier. I think that the people who are physically active when they're young, it's easier to do physically active things as an adult, even if it may not be the same thing. I just think it makes it easier to do.
And we talked about before that a lot of people who start as adult, maybe they had an interest in it as a kid. And I'd argue, when you think about it as a kid, if you were to go back and think of all the things you were interested in at one point as a kid, you could do just about anything still. But martial arts, for a lot of people, it sticks with them, Maybe as a kid, I wanted to go out and, shoot hoops more, play more basketball. But now that I'm older, it's not something that I plan on pursuing. But you saw this as a kid, you too, Kevin, wanted to do martial arts. And when you were older and you had the means to, like, okay, I'm going to give this a try.
Well, and I think that one of the hardest things about training as an adult is, and I think this is why people always say, if they're not a kid, they always say, well, I'm too old. I've had people in their early 20s tell me they're too old for martial arts, and I've had people in their 60s tell me they're too old for martial arts, and I've seen people within that age gap all start. Like, that is an inherent in your own head thing that keeps you from doing it. You're not actually too old. The only thing you're going to run into is you're not going to develop the flexibility. Really, at the end of the day, that is the only major difference I've noticed starting not as a kid, because I started when I was pretty much fully grown, 19, but I wasn't growing anymore. And so my bones and things like that were not developing. My flexibility was the hardest thing. Whereas Joshua, you started as a kid, you don't have to stretch. You're naturally flexible because since you were a kid, you've been working those dynamic stretches that you don't have to think about it. Whereas older people, we have to intentionally think about that. I think that's really the only major difference in age, is a little bit of flexibility.
Well, we all need to understand that genetically we're all born with different flexibility capabilities. There are some people who are loosey-goosey and have been since day one. There are others like me who I struggle with my flexibility, but I continue to work on it. And I understand that genetically I may not be as flexible as somebody else. And that's okay. Not everything in martial arts is based on flexibility.
Right. You just have the image of, Chuck Norris and Van Damme doing the splits, between and you think, oh, no, that's a very specific instance, and that's a very specific person and a very specific martial arts style that involves a lot of kicking.
Mm-hmm.
And I do find it interesting whenever someone says, I don't think I could do that, but they watch the kids' classes go. Because I can understand, I don't think I can do martial arts if all you ever see is the cage fights and the action movies. Like, those are, either staged or top athletes. But, watch the kids go out there and do it. Sure, again, they got the flexibility. You may not be able to do that. But what they're doing is not that crazy. It's pretty simple stuff, and it's the same in an adult. But you can do just about anything these kids can do. And working with a lot of kids, there is a high range in talent, which means there'll be some kids out there who you'll see and those are just very talented students. But some of those kids out there on the mats, they are not great at this either. A lot of them are not great at this either, but either they put in practice to get better, they grow up a little bit, and it's the same thing as an adult. You don't have to be great right away. You start at the beginner level for a reason.
And Joshua, I think you tie that into also the idea is that I can't do it or I won't do it because sometimes as adults, we don't want to appear silly. Mm-hmm. We don't want to embarrass ourselves. Especially with women, you have some body issues there. How do I view my body? How has society viewed my body? Mm. How have my parents viewed my body? Told me about that. I was very lucky. I did not have, those kinds of messages. I did from society, but definitely not from my mom and dad. That you're too skinny, or that you don't weigh the right weight. You're not the right size. I didn't have any of those messages. But society certainly gives women, especially, certain physical attributes that are wanted and admired, and certain physical attributes that are not wanted, and pretty much you're told you shouldn't be that.
And I think that brings up a good point, because you said a lot of times they don't want to get embarrassed. They don't want to embarrass themselves. Mm-hmm. And this also ties into what you were saying, Joshua, in that I think if a parent watches their kid, they think, that's not that hard. Why can't my kid get it? But they won't go out and do it themselves because in the back of their head they say, well, what if I can't do it? Sure. How silly am I going to look as an adult who we say, hey, step your right foot, and I step my left? That's an embarrassment for an adult. For a kid, they don't really care. And we understand, it's a kid. They're still learning left and right. They're still learning this coordination. But as an adult, I should already have that, which is not the case.
And I'll say as a teacher, having worked with a bunch of kids, you can take this into mind, that whenever I work with someone new, including adults, I expect very little from you. If you come out and know how to do one of the kicks I'm telling you right away, without me having to break it down piece by piece over and over again, I'll think you're the most talented person ever. Even if you're just, pretty standard. And I see that with adults sometimes. They'll come out and they'll pick it up quicker because they're older. They understand concepts better. And I honestly am surprised, and I end up thinking you actually look great just because we work with so many kids. We're used to having new people who are absolutely clueless about how their body works. So if you go into a class at least knowing your left from your right, we'll give you a thumbs up then.
You're a golden.
If you know your left from your right, there's no way you're going to be embarrassed, or at least we're going to think any less of you, because we expect you to come in new and not sure how to do this stuff.
Sure.
I actually, we were doing, I'm going to use today, this morning, we were doing a drill in our class, our leadership class. And the drill, we were talking about using angles. And in the leadership class, most everyone there was an adult. We had a couple teenagers and really only one, I would say, kid. And he's a very talented kid. But so here's a group of higher ranks, primarily black belts, primarily adults. We're doing this angle drill. We're stepping. And I look over at John, one of the other instructors, and I say, hey, I want you to look around at the number of black belts and where their guards at on this very simple drill. And he goes, oh. And then he immediately was like, now let's actually act like we're black belts and keep our guards up.
I want to say I had my guard up the whole time.
It wasn't everyone, but there was enough high ranks that because it was a new drill, the simple concept just evaded them because it is new. And so as an adult, when you come in and you think, why can't I learn this? No one learns this. Not when you learn one new piece, everything else goes out the window until it becomes muscle memory. Mm-hmm. Like that's just how it goes. So like Joshua was saying, our expectations are step here, you stepped there. That, hey, great, you did that. If you know your left from your right, then good on you.
You know, if there's any secret about martial arts, is simply keep coming to the gym. Every day that you come in, be consistent. If that's 2 days or 3 days, keep coming in. Be consistent and you'll see those changes. And try not, as an adult, try your best not to get frustrated. It's easy to get frustrated when you're stepping and punching, but no, it's not that hand, it's the other hand. And those sorts of things. That eye and hand coordination, or eye and, foot and hand coordination, sometimes escapes us. It escapes me after 32 years of doing this. There are times when I'm going, wait a minute, and my ladies in my kickboxing class will point out to you don't know your left from your right. And I said, well, apparently not today. It's just one of those things. And not to be embarrassed by that. It happens. It's okay. It's just okay. And that's how you learn.
With that, I think the older you get, the more important it is to set goals. Because I think for kids, it's still important to set goals. But they'll come into a class, and a lot of them, they don't care if it's something new that they don't know, or it's a concept that they struggle with. They're just there because they like doing it. They want to have fun. It's something new. But if adults, whenever it is something new or a concept we don't understand as quickly, it can be a lot more disheartening, I think, because we expect more and we expect to get it faster. So I think it's important to set goals. You can look at something new. I've started new styles of martial arts, and it's like there's a lot I don't know. But if I focus on, okay, here's the basic moves I want to learn. I want to get those down really good. Get that goal. Or I want to get this belt or this. Like, focus on a few things, work them over and over again. They say doing one thing 1,000 times is better than 1,000 things one time. Mm-hmm. Like, do it over and over again. And I've talked to other black belts who I kind of train with or who train with me, and I've voiced frustration when it feels like they don't teach that way. Because I think sometimes and we got to be careful of this as teachers. I'm sure I do it too. But we know so much that we want to teach all these big concepts to these people right away, especially because a lot of adults we work with are pretty talented and we think they can handle it. But I think it's good to remind ourselves as well that, for someone new, working the same thing over and over again is still going to be beneficial to them. We might get bored doing a side kick over and over again, but to someone new, they could probably spend a whole 45-minute class just working on a side kick and still be engaged and still learn something from it.
I think that's a big difference between adults and kids, is that an adult generally is more apt to do something again and again and again until they feel comfortable. Whereas a kid, they'll do it a couple times and they're like, I want to move on, because a kid, like you said, isn't worried about getting comfortable. They just want to have fun and do something different. Mm-hmm. The kids come in and go, look at my jump kick. And then what they in their head is they jump up and they do this beautiful jump kick, and they're like that old school movie, like master expectation. Reality is we see them flail their arms and legs in some incoherent manner, and they called it a jump kick. But to a kid, they're just having fun. An adult, I think, like you said, Deb, has an expectation. They say, I should be able to do this, and I don't want to move on until I get X, Y, Z. And so they have this almost perfectionist mindset that really gets in the way more than anything else. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you experienced when you started?
Yes. Some of that was my own, and some of that was just, well, I can't, I played tennis, I played soccer, my eye-hand coordination is pretty doggone good, but now you're wanting me to step with my left, jab with my left, punch with my right, and then kick with my back. It's just too much. Because martial arts asks you to do things in coordination with your upper body and lower body that nobody had asked you to do. Okay? Think, for instance, soccer. You don't use your hands, you use your feet. Mm-hmm. Baseball. You run on your feet, but what? You throw and hit with your upper body. Basketball, you have dribbling it down, but you stand still and do that. You're not moving your feet when you do take a shot. So asking your body to use continually, not occasionally, but typically to continue to use your upper body and your footwork, especially in sparring.
Yep.
That gets confusing. I don't know which part comes first.
That would be an interesting drill to take a group of, because you mentioned soccer players,
sure.
Take a group of soccer players and tell them, now you have to play this entire game with your hands up, touching your eyebrows and elbows in.
Sure.
But you still have to play your game of soccer. How many of them are going to drop that hands because they're not used to it?
Sure.
All of them.
And I think when you look at martial arts, you think it's something you've got to train physically. But I think what you're getting at, and I agree, is that there's like a lot of mental training, and we like had to learn how to move our bodies this way. So you see one of us who can just do this with almost without thought, because we can. We have over the years pretty much made our minds work this way, that we can do these things without really thinking about it. That's just how our brain is programmed to move. It took us years to get there. And I've talked to adults before who want to get better at sparring. And they're like, well, how are your sparring instincts so good? How can you just react to things so quickly without having to think about it? And I just told them, I don't have a drill that's going to teach you this, at least not right away. This is something that will take you classes, months, years to get better at, because we've all been doing this for decades plus. You just keep doing it, and it's something that it's more the time than the skill put in almost for some of these ideas.
I mean, just think how we chamber a universal kick. Mm-hmm. It's a 4-count kick. Well, if I'm doing soccer, I don't have a 4-count kick. I just kick the ball.
Yeah.
Right?
2, out and back.
Yeah, out and back, and that's it. And then you're also adding, now after that, you have to replace it, and then you throw this, and it's just a whole lot of stuff to remember.
No offense to soccer enthusiasts out there.
Absolutely
We
not.
know that is a very difficult sport, and there's a lot of coordination that you have to have in it.
Absolutely. And to be, Olympic style or whatever, you have to be very, very talented to do that.
But again, if you take one of our top kickers here and put him on a soccer field, there's going to be different concepts and things that they have to learn. Each sport has its own fundamentals.
Well, and I think that the biggest thing that I have noticed, it's not so much me training as more of a teenager or an adult, but training adults, seeing adults come in, is the limitation that is put on themselves. We were having this discussion at lunch that the difference between a woman coming in to train martial arts, an adult woman, versus an adult man coming in to train. And I had never thought about that, but you're 100% accurate on that. So what was that, Deb, that you said the difference, like a woman and a man coming in to train as an adult?
Well, it has to do kind of with ego. An older gentleman's ego, maybe I have to keep up with the young ones. And I don't want to be embarrassed, and I have to go hard with these young ones, and I have to prove myself. Whereas women, on the other hand, we don't have the confidence to come out and hit something really hard. We have more of a lack of confidence. I have to find the tigress inside. Some women are different. Not everybody fits the mold. So, and again, that's a reflection of society. Women are supposed to be demure. From my generation, probably 40 on up, younger women are very, very different. As I see a lot of younger women come in and they'll go after it and they'll get after it.
Good.
Okay? But even though, but there are some younger women who have some issues with that as well. It's just one of those things that I don't believe I can hit hard. And look at, in martial arts, what does martial arts stand for? Martial arts. It's war. Martial.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes a woman's femininity may be called into question if she does the martial arts. Because women, we don't fight. Society says we're not supposed to. On the other hand, we live in a world that women do need to know how to defend themselves. Because there are bad people out there who have ill intentions. And so we need to be prepared.
And I found that just interesting that it's so true that adult men tend to have to kind of, like you said, they want to prove themselves. They want to say, well, I can do this. Well, I've got to do this stronger. I've got to do this harder. I've got to do this better. And so their limitation is themselves trying to put this expectation of, I'm a man. I've got to do this maybe better than my kid or better than that kid or better than this other dog. Okay. And not all. This is a very broad spectrum. But then women that come in, it's generally, well, I don't think I can get to this level. And so it's almost I've got to tone this person down and I've got to build this person up and I've got to do it all in this glorious same exact class that everybody's in and make it all work. Which is an instruction topic. But I think that's the big difference between men and women, which you pointed out, I think is going away, which I think is good. It makes my job easier. Especially when you see kids, that isn't always as prevalent. Like a little boy and a little girl, how they act and learn nowadays is very similar. They are to have fun. Sometimes they have a little bit of an ego. Sometimes they need a confidence boost. But it could be both ways. It's no longer, I can no longer stereotype it. Which I think is good. I don't like stereotypes. I'm happy when I see them get broken.
And one thing I'll say is some of the adults who are a bit more ingrained in our training community and have trained, like men who train with women or women who train with men, I feel like it's less of a problem because those men who've trained with the other women, they feel like they're not the ones with the egos, and the women who train with the other men seem to be more confident in their ability. And I see those adults, they're able to get along better and they communicate better with each other and they're more engaged in class. While some of the ones on the outside who just kind of work maybe a bit more in their bubbles, usually because they're newer as well, that's where you see some of that a little bit more. And you can look at we have a few 14, 15-year-old boys here who, even me, I'm young, I'm in my 20s, but there's some days after a whole evening of working that I can't do what they can do. They're bigger than me. They're 15-year-old boys. And this is if you have ego that you have to keep up with them, I'm not going to keep up with them. They're, in a few years, they're not going to be able to do things the way they do now. Because as you get older, we have to be cautious about, we do have to stretch more, safety. And one thing I want to get into, if you don't have anything else on that to talk about, is when limitations do get in the way, and how not letting those end your training or stop you from getting in the door. Is there are times there are certain people who can't do certain things or have to train differently. And as someone who's in their 60s, Miss Deb, maybe you can give us a bit more of a look into that.
Sure. And I've told my kickboxing class this. I repeat it every once in a while. As you go through your journey in the martial arts, there are going to be points and times that you're going to have to modify what you do to stay in the game. Like at 40, when I had to spar from our first degree black belt. Now, keep in mind, I was actually from a school that was a fight school that a lot of them did fight full contact in the ring. Okay? So those are the people that I had to fight during my first degree black belt. Mm-hmm. Well, guess who got a bloody nose? Hello, I did. Okay? But I fought ferociously then at 40. Crank it almost 30 years later, guys. I can't go out there and take those kind of hits and even give those kind of hits anymore. So I have to ratchet my sparring down to go, okay, we're going to do a flow drill. Tap me, but don't beat me up. Kind of one of those things. The guys here have seen me come in. I have a bad shoulder that acts up. I have knees that are older. So sometimes I have to do push-ups from my knees. I don't do regular push-ups. And that's okay. That's perfectly fine. I have a friend who's a 7th degree black belt, and a few years ago, she's a couple of years older than me. She stopped, and the reason that she stopped martial arts was simply because she couldn't do the martial arts like she had done in the past. And I tried to talk to her and I said, but that doesn't matter. With the knowledge that you have on sparring, on drills, on footwork, on combos, you can still pass that on. You don't have to get out there and you don't have to do these super hard drills. But
I've always wondered if got in an accident when training here, broke something, pulled out my shoulder. I had to, be in a cast for a couple months or whatever. It's my job, so I want to keep having my job. So I'd be here no matter what. Right. But I'm gonna be on the mat still. Even if I have crutches, after a week or two, I will be out here still teaching somehow. I won't be able to do all the same things. I might have to teach in a slightly different way or capacity. And I'm sure Kevin would say the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. You probably wouldn't be far off either. We would come out here in a shoulder sling and still teach.
Right.
We would just have to teach differently because we want to be here trying to train another day.
And what's special for me about this school that a lot of schools don't have is that we have enough instructors who can come in and teach a class. Like Joshua. I've asked Joshua to come and teach jumping kicks to the younger folks in my kickboxing class. Mm-hmm. Simply because I don't do a 180 anymore. I don't do a tornado anymore. And I fully admit today that I was never good at them when I did do them. They were not those pretty ones. I got up off the ground, but it wasn't much. Mm-hmm. So, or when I want Kevin, to teach a specific drill in groundwork, I'll have you come into my class. So things that I'm not good at, I don't have to worry about it. I have other people to pull from. And that's true if any one of us gets injured in some capacity. We'll all be out there on the mat, but we also support each other. That creates the environment where we can succeed on the mat, even with having an injury.
Well, and I think it's important, like we said, that even if you get older and you can't do the things you used to, or you have an injury, it's doing what you can rather than focusing on what you can't.
Correct.
Because you've said many times, if you stop this is when your health declines. Mm-hmm. You're almost 70. I can't tell you how many people I know that are your age that they have trouble going up and down stairs. You're out here sparring and fighting and kicking and punching and doing grappling and takedowns and throws and wrist locks. And then I look at someone else the same age as you, maybe even a little younger, and they can't go up and down stairs. And you've said, I don't want to be that. That's why as an adult, I did this, and I keep doing it. Yeah, you see my finger point that all the people listening can't see, but that is very true. It's when you stop is when it catches up to you. And so, if, like Joshua said, we are in a sling, we're going to keep doing it. We're just going to do what we can, because we know if we just stop, that's just going to make it worse. And it's going to make it harder to come back. Absolutely. And like you said, it's consistency. There's no magic trick. Both of you said it, Deb and Joshua both said there's no magic. It's just over time, consistency. You will get better at this. But if you allow yourself to fall victim to that, well, I'm going to stop because this, that, or the other, well, then that's when it catches up to you.
And consistency is important for any age, but I feel like for adults, they're a lot better at making excuses about, well, I was busy at work this week, I'm not feeling good, I'm not going to come. And I mean, we all need days where we take a day off. That's not the problem. But I see so many adults, it feels like almost half of them who end up training with us end up doing this, and then eventually it just kind of spirals out of control. And they're so infrequent, and they either end up quitting or they never get anywhere. Because they make excuses for one reason or another, and they don't have that consistency. So if you want to commit to something, you want to get good at it, it's cliche as it sounds, you can't make excuses.
Well, and I think a lot of times we make choices for other people. I can't come here because I've got the kids, or I've got this, or I've got that. But at some point in time, health-wise, you need to choose to make yourself a priority. I'm the priority. Because if you never get to that point that it's important to me, it is a priority, it's really high up there on my list of things that I need to do for me, then you cannot be consistent, and you won't be consistent.
It's funny that the very thing that with kids training, well, the kid gets bored, and so they want to quit. And then the parents are like, well, I don't want them to quit. And we say, well, they got to get over this hump. And some parents, buckle down and say, you're not going to quit. Some parents give in. But the parents always agree, the adult always agrees, well, if you just were consistent and kept coming. But when they try to do it for themselves, and that's happened before where I've said, well, you didn't let your kid quit for these reasons, so why are you going to let yourself? And then you can kind of see the gears turn, and but that's hard. That is so hard for people to admit that and get over that hump. Because you're right, it is easy for adults to make an excuse. Kids have school, homework, and that's pretty much it. Then adults have child care, they have jobs, they have all these extra things that can get in the way. And if we don't take that time for ourselves, then it's hard to put that time into someone else like you were talking about.
But a common thing I hear a lot from adults, especially younger adults out of school, is that, they have trouble finding places with a community and where they can make friends. And it's, this is a place where you can do that. And if you commit to something and are consistent, you can have that. And that's why a lot of adults do end up sticking with it, because they get that aspect that if you don't need to find a reason to do something that is important and that's going to keep you healthy, is going to grow a skill you want to learn, and keep you engaged with others. There's multiple things you get out of it. And if that's something you want, don't go keep looking for it aimlessly. Like, look at what, is available to you. And I'm more talking to people who have already started martial arts at this point. Because if you haven't started, well, then I hope you find a dojo or some other place, gym activity where you get that. But to someone who does have that, realize the benefits you have there.
And I think all three of us would agree that one of the major things that keeps us in here.
I don't agree.
You don't agree? Already you're not going to agree with me.
I'm kidding.
As usual. Anyway, just kidding. But it's the relationships that we have, not only with each other, but with our students.
Right.
One of the number one things for anybody 65 plus is loneliness. I know, Pat. but I think how sad. Because if you come into a school, a good school, you will be welcomed with open arms. You become a family. We're just a family here. We're a community. And you'll have those relationships. Because people have asked me, I do live alone. They go, don't you get bored or, lonely? And I went, oh no. I have my people meter filled when I come and I work the hours that I work, here at the school. And so it fights that loneliness that causes basically different diseases, depression, and premature aging as well for senior citizens.
And I think you can look at it through this lens too, as if you start martial arts, you have trouble with being consistent and being motivated. Ask yourself, have you reached out to the other students? And I get some people are more introverted, they're shyer, but I see kids and adults, they don't, hang out and chat with the others. They keep to themselves. If you want motivation to keep being here, talk with some of the other people. Start building those relationships with your instructors, with the other students, and you'll find not only is training more fun, you'll be more motivated, and it'll be easier to be consistent because you have that network who is looking out for you, and that keeps you wanting to be there besides just, the training.
Yeah, they adults, kids too, but adults especially, they come for what they think is martial arts training, self-defense, or just staying fit and doing activity. They stay for the friends in the community they meet. We have students here that I think it's funny. They'll kind of give each other a hard time, like, "Hey, why weren't you in sparring? I want to spar you as my partner tonight." I have 2 ladies in one of my adult classes that bought matching gis for each other to wear, and that kind of friendship there, and those communities that you build. I had another adult come in because a friend of his brought their kid in, and he just wanted to be there to support. I have had 2 of my old students come in. One came in because they're on military leave, and the other one just saw my truck outside and was like, "I wonder if Kevin's there," and dropped by and said hello. You come for this reason: fitness, self-defense, or I want to learn martial arts because I always wanted to do it as a kid. But it's always the community that's the reason you stick around. Across the board, number one answer. It's the vibe in the community you get from your school. Like you said, it's a family. It is a family. Make sure that your family treats you well. Make sure that your family is friendly. Make sure you do not have, arguments over it with your family. It's the family you come to get away from all the other family.
That can be very true.
Which is why me and Kevin are kind of stuck.
I know. Golly. No, I love my family. All my family. My family intertwines.
But yeah, I think those are all great points. And to both people who are looking to start martial arts, people who are doing martial arts as an adult, there are things that are different about doing it as an adult. But I think, from my point of view, it's not that much different. The way we teach you is not that much different from the kids. The reasons people start and quit are not that much different. The way people learn, not that much different. It's just doing it and just, keep doing it.
Well, you've always said, Joshua, that to be a really good teacher, and I agree with you, you need to teach the little kids classes. In our case, 4, 5, and 6-year-olds. We call them little ninjas. You gotta teach them, because really teaching the bigger kids and teaching adults, yeah, your tone might change, but it's really the same thing. Adults are just big kids, and sometimes they forget what it's like to be a kid, and this can remind them of that.
I think this is a great story to finish with because a couple days ago for our adult class, actually before the night even started, Miss Deb and I were here, and we were just on the other side. We had a few minutes before classes start, so we got out some of the laundry hampers we have over on the other side and a bunch of the dodgeballs we use for our parents' night out. And we just started like tossing them around with each other and coming up with all these games. So we look at each other and like, why don't we combine our adult classes later tonight for the last few minutes and just play some games and work on hand-eye coordination and have some fun? So we did that. End of the month, end of the cycle, we were like, let's just play some games to finish class. And I think everyone had a good time. They learned something. It was fun.
They were smiling and sweating and laughing. I mean, so
just these same fun games we play with the kids. They had just as much fun doing.
SSL, sweat, smiles, and learning.
Well, great.
That's what I heard about. I heard something about the adult class, and that was, or y'all would go play dodgeball and stuff when I'm not here.
Sorry.
Go figure. That's fine.
We had to make sure Kevin wasn't here, or he would have disapproved. You guys don't know this, but he's very strict when we're teaching.
You can't laugh, Deb. It'll ruin what he's trying to say.
I'm sorry.
It's true. Buy the book. This way. This is the only way. No change.
Well, in a couple weeks will be our season finale to season 2 of Kicking for a Living. Then we'll go on a break for a bit, come back hopefully with some fresh new ideas soon. But glad we got you again this season, Deb, for an episode. We have, I think 15 episodes now, so share them with anyone who is interested in martial arts. So if you're friends, give us a like, comment, ask any questions to us. We'd love to hear from you. Anything you have to say, Kevin?
Just thank you so much, Deb, for being here again. Always fun to have on guest. I appreciate it. And always appreciate your viewpoints and talking to you.
Well, thank you, Joshua and Kevin, for having me. It's always a blast.
Yes, ma'am.
I love to hear different views. And if any of our listeners has any questions about starting as an older adult, reach out to the dojo. I'll be happy to personally give you a call, email you, however you want me to communicate with you. And I'll be happy to answer any kind of concerns or questions that you have about coming in here, okay? Just do it. You'll love it.
Great. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
And until next time, keep kicking
For a living.